So there are certain traits that are more desirable than others when it comes to how well one succeeds in the business world, and this is heavily backed up by studies. So without further wasting your time with a lengthy intro, let's get into the traits that predict success according to psychology. So this theory is based on the Big Five personality traits, also known as the 5-factor model, which suggests that there are 5 pretty broad dimensions that can describe the human personality and psyche. And these 5 traits are conscientiousness, agreeableness, neuroticism or high negative emotion, openness and extroversion. And out of the Big 5 personality traits, there are 3 in particular that predict success according to psychological studies, which Jordan Peterson, amongst others, has talked about a few times, and he even mentions this in his infamous interview with Katie Newman.
I want to ask you, is it not desirable to have some of those female traits you're talking about? I'd say that's a generalization, but you've used the words female traits. Is it not desirable to have some of them at the top of business? I mean, maybe there wouldn't have been a banking crisis.
They don't predict success in the workplace. The things that predict success in the workplace are intelligence and conscientiousness. Agreeableness negatively predicts success in the workplace. And so does high negative emotion.
So before I break these traits down, let me say this. For some people, these traits are natural and they are more likely to advance in the workplace and essentially get a higher paid position and earn more money. However, if these traits don't come to you naturally, it will definitely not exclude you from being successful, but this video might just highlight the traits you need to improve upon if you want to speed up the process and boost the predictability to become successful. So if you want to test yourself on the 5-factor model, I'll link a website where you can do that for free. And by the way, I have no affiliation with this site. So the first trait is conscientiousness, and it's a pretty broad term, but it's arguably the single biggest trait that predicts success, and a staggering amount of research backs this up. And it can be described as the way in which people control impulses and the ability to delay gratification rather than giving in to immediate rewards that often produce undesirable long-term consequences. And conscientious people tend to be very organized, rarely late, and are excellent at making plans and sticking to them. And the same goes for setting goals and sticking to a routine to achieve them. And even if the goal is super ambitious and impossible to reach, instead of giving up completely, they change it, making it more attainable. And intelligence is another factor that deserves to be mentioned specifically as a predictor of success, but it's not a separate personality trait, but rather a part of one's conscientiousness. So people who score high on the scale of conscientiousness is perceived by others to be intelligent. And they might not score higher on an SAT or IQ test, but they will more than often end up getting higher grades and overall GPAs than their peers because of their higher level of conscientiousness. And the second trait is agreeableness, or in this case non-agreeableness. And being too agreeable is not necessarily an undesirable trait to have, as you will get along greater with more people. However, it won't serve you well when it comes to advancing in your career. And I'm only referencing what research says about traits that predict success, and being too agreeable negatively predicts success. The business world is not a kind, cuddly, forgiving place, so you gotta be fucking ruthless sometimes and not give in to other people's needs and wants over your own. And in order to get ahead, you'll have to be able to stand your ground and not be too agreeable, which also builds character and integrity. So non-agreeable people are in large paid more, sometimes even though they have the same job, because of their abilities to argue a higher wage and not settle for anything lower than that. And it's a pretty unpleasant conversation to have, but that won't stand in their way when it comes to getting what they want. Non-agreeable people place their own self-interest above other people, which serves them well in advancing in the workplace. However, it's not optimal when it comes to social interactions, as they are unconcerned with others and won't really extend their hands for other people. They are often skeptical towards other people's motives, which makes them seem unfriendly and uncooperative. Finding a balance and being able to mix the agreeableness trait is the overall best solution, rather than always being extreme on one side all the time. And just remember that the business world is a ruthless place, and ruthless, non-agreeable people will come out on top in this competitive environment, and rightfully so. The next trait is neuroticism, or the tendency to experience high negative emotions. So people that score high on the scale of neuroticism tend to react emotionally to events or situations that would not really affect people who score low on this scale. They see ordinary situations as potentially harmful and threatening, and the problem with high levels of neuroticism is that it diminishes a person's ability to think rationally and clearly in order to make better decisions and cope with stress. And you're more likely to succeed if you score low in neuroticism, as these people can stay calm, free from negative emotions in seemingly stressful situations, resulting in making overall better decisions in the long term. They also tend to have a more optimistic outlook on life, are carefree and self-confident. It's not uncommon to battle high levels of neuroticism by practicing Stoic philosophy, which is heavily used among top performers and prolific achievers worldwide. So if you want to know more about Stoicism, you can watch my video on 7 lessons to practice a Stoic mindset, which I'll link below. And the other 2 traits not mentioned by Peterson in the interview is openness and extraversion. So openness, or openness to experience, is a trait that measures creativity, curiosity, eagerness to learn new things, which is obviously a great trait to have. On the other side of the scale, if you score low in openness, you're most likely more reluctant to change, resist new ideas, and are not very imaginative, which isn't a very desirable trait to have in the world of business. And the last trait in the 5-factor model is extraversion, and scoring high on this scale strongly predicts one to become an effective leader. Dominance and sociability are the most important attributes for that. However, with that being said, there are many great leaders who are not naturally extroverted. And for that matter, there are also extroverted leaders that are horrible because they lack in other areas. And don't worry if these traits don't come natural to you, as you can always work towards improving yourself in these areas if you're lacking in them. And as always, I'll leave links to the references below if you want to check them out, and I'll also leave the link to the site where you can test yourself on the scale of the big 5 personality traits. And I hope you enjoy the video, and I'll see you in the next one.
But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
So you haven't sat there and... I'm just trying to work that out. I mean...
Ha, gotcha.
You have got me. I'm trying to work that through in my head. Yeah, it took a while.
It did.
That's how you know you fucked up.